Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1073, Sunday, March the 15th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, don't forget to get your comments, to get your vote in for Dumbass of the Week in the comments section of this video. The comments section of this video for Dumbass of the Week. And try to get that comment in by 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the comment section of this video. Alrighty, let's get with the news of the day. We got quite a bit to cover here. And the first thing I want to do is provide an update to a story that we've been talking about for 2 or 3 days. And of course, just last week we had the story that Judge Lambert had ruled that the Right Reverend Clinton, Cheryl Mills, and Paul Gambetta, Stone Tier, all had to give depositions to Judicial Watch. And then we got the story 2 days ago that the Right Reverend Clinton, her attorneys on behalf of the Right Reverend Clinton and Cheryl Mills, filed a motion to appeal the decision of Judge Lambert. Basically, they're saying it's ridiculous that they provided all this information and answered all these questions. Well, I don't think that's going to fly, because if you go back and read Judge Lambert's own words, what he said, you will find that the Right Reverend Clinton and the State Department have not provided all the information requested, nor have they answered all the questions. In fact, they've done everything they can over the last 6 years to avoid that. And so I don't think that that is going to fly. I think this is more of a delay tactic. The Right Reverend Clinton wants to try to put this off until after probably the Democratic convention, because she's got her eyes set on being the nominee. So I think that that's what's really driving this. And of course, she really doesn't want to testify, nor does Cheryl Mills want to testify, because they know that there are things that emails and documents that were supposed to be turned over for the Benghazi investigation that were not turned over. There's information that the Right Reverend Clinton and Cheryl Mills would have and Paul Gambetta would have that have not been brought forth because they've refused. Gambetta pleaded the fifth and wouldn't answer any questions, and Cheryl Mills and the Right Reverend have dodged everything along the way. And of course, during the Clinton email so-called investigation by Jimmy the Weasel Comey and McCabe and Strzok in the group, they didn't. They allowed the Right Reverend Clinton's fact witness people, who also are her attorneys, to be in the so-called Q&A with her. They did not put her under oath, and they did not record any of it, and they apparently did not request any specific documentation. So it really wasn't an investigation at all. So now we're getting more information on. There's a lot of things that's still out there that Judicial Watch wants to ask about, but there's one really specific thing that they've been trying to get to the bottom of for quite some time, and we now know what that is. And it's based on a statement that was made by an individual named Ray Maxwell, who testified to the Benghazi committee. So I'm going to read this for you, what Maxwell said in his statement, and then I'll go over it with you. So Ray Maxwell, who's a former Assistant Secretary of State for North African Affairs, had told reporters that Cheryl Mills was one of several Clinton aides who on a Sunday afternoon separated out Benghazi-related documents that might put Clinton or her team in a bad light. These documents were kept out of the pile that the State Department turned over to the Accountability Review Board that was investigating Benghazi. When Maxwell stumbled upon the operation, which was taking place in a basement operations center at the State Department's headquarters in Washington, he questioned whether it was done above board, whether what they were doing by separating these Benghazi emails or damaging emails, separating these things out, whether that was above board. And he asked the question. He said, hey, isn't that unethical? And the office director in charge of weeding out the process said to him, "Ray, those are our orders." So then, a few minutes later, Cheryl Mills enters the room and challenged Maxwell over his presence, asking him, "Who are you?" So here we have actual first-hand testimony that Cheryl Mills, on the direction of, we can assume, the rotten Reverend Clinton, who was head of the State Department at the time as Secretary of State, had ordered Cheryl Mills and some other aides to go down and go through documents and emails that had been requested by this review board that was looking into Benghazi, to extract from these documents and emails anything that would shed a bad light on the rotten Reverend Clinton in regards to Benghazi and probably other things as well. And this is one of the main reasons why they want to find out and talk to the rotten Reverend Clinton and find out who gave that order, who the people were who were involved in weeding this stuff out, what happened to those documents and emails that were weeded out, what stack did they get put on and into, and where are they today. And they also want to ask Cheryl Mills about the nature of some of the documents that she set aside and did not turn over, and why she did this. And they want to find out who this office director in charge was, who was overseeing this process. And of course they want to question Cheryl Mills about why she challenged Mr. Maxwell. So, and there's probably other questions that they have as well. And this is just one of many things, but this is just an example. This is just an example of the types of things that would not be considered ridiculous. And that's the motion that the rotten Reverend Clinton's attorneys filed, is to say that this deposition of Cheryl Mills, Combetta, and the rotten Reverend is ridiculous. As you can see here from this example, it is not about anything ridiculous. It's about getting to the bottom of what we clearly know in just this one example. And there are many more examples of things like this where they attempted to hide documents that could have been damaging to the rotten Reverend. There you go. Well, it looks like we have Whoopi Goldberg. She's really pushing hard now for the rotten Reverend Clinton to be the VP under Biden. Now, I can't imagine how angry the rotten Reverend Clinton must be when she hears somebody suggesting she should be Biden's VP. I don't think she would go for that very much, because the rotten Reverend Clinton knows that Biden is sicker than she is. Now, she has physical issues. We all know that from 2016. But Biden has actual mental issues. And I think that the rotten Reverend Clinton would be extremely angry, upset at the thought that she should be Biden's VP, especially when she's probably in the process right now of manipulating people and situations to push Biden out just as soon as they possibly can at the right time, at the time of her choosing, so that she can stroll in and be the nominee. But it is going to have to look like she's being drafted. It's going to have to be one of them situations where she sits back and pretends she wants nothing to do with it, and then they come to her and beg her to come in and be the nominee because Biden simply can't make it. And she'll be arranging events and situations for that to happen. You can bet on that. She's not going to let this opportunity to grab power pass her by. She is as much aware of Biden's situation as you and I. She's not going to let this opportunity pass her by. It's just not going to happen. There's too much power at stake for the rotten Reverend Clinton. And with her ambitions and lust for power, she simply will not be able to avoid it. It's like dragging a redworm across the nose of a smallmouth bass who just finished giving birth. They're going to jump on it, my friends. For those of you who have done any fishing in a farm pond, you know what I'm talking about. Well, of course, many of you have seen the disastrous remainders, the tatters of the attempted virtual town hall that Burisma Joe tried to pull off yesterday, or day before yesterday. That didn't go very well, as you can imagine. So, in case you didn't see the virtual town hall disaster from the Biden campaign, let me give you just a kind of a play-by-play of how that went down. First of all, it was supposed to air at 4 o'clock, but it was pushed back to 6 o'clock. Then, when it finally began, Biden begins speaking, but there is no actual audio. Next, you get, while Biden is talking and there's no audio, you get a Dick Durbin appearing on a separate screen where he's holding a small child. Now, there's no dialogue from Durbin. Biden is still speaking, you can't really hear him, but now you can see Biden and Durbin. Then, as Biden is trying to read from a teleprompter, the broadcast begins to suffer from severe technical issues, as Biden's words were caught into a feedback loop, which muddled the whole presentation, making Biden nearly indecipherable. Biden then tosses it to former Obama Surgeon General, who offered hygiene recommendations. Then it goes back to Biden, who's taking questions. But then Biden, although heard speaking, doesn't actually appear on screen. So now you've got audio, but you don't see quid pro quo Joe. Now, when the first person calls in to ask a question, Biden's speech and his response is completely garbled the entire time. So they move on to the next questioner. And the next questioner asked Biden if he would satisfy Bernie Sanders supporters. And Biden responds by saying he would because they are aligned on so many issues. Then, as he's actually trying to answer that question, he forgets that what he's doing, I assume, and he actually turns as he's talking, puts his head down, and begins to actually walk off camera. And he takes a couple paces so that he's kind of half in and half on the frame, and he's facing this way like he's talking to people over here, but the camera is over here behind him, and he's facing this way. So he literally walks off camera while attempting to answer a question, and it looks like he has completely forgotten that he's doing a video presentation. He's supposed to be looking at directly ahead, and when he's taking questions, of course, they're being fed to him on a teleprompter that he needs to read. But I guess because he was starting to respond to a question, he did what we oftentimes see him do in these town halls or speeches he gives, where he likes to sort of pontificate, and when he does that, he likes to walk around. And he likes to put his head down and just start pontificating, and then he likes to walk into different directions, including looking at behind him, looking beside him, where there actually are no people. He's not facing the audience, directing his answer to the audience. He likes to sometimes just drift off and start walking away and looking down, looking where there are no people, and like he's not aware that he's addressing a crowd of people. So that, of course, showed up as another major problem. And then they try to cover it by putting up a banner. Of course, then the next question, when he finishes that, the next question for Biden is how Biden's healthcare plan would solve the current healthcare crisis, and also asking if Biden supported the Endangered Species Act. So Biden confirms that he does support the Endangered Species Act, and then says, well, I'm sorry, this is such a disjointed affair here, or effort here. And then, as he's laughing, he signs off. That was the Joe Biden digital experience, the Joe Biden town hall, the virtual town hall, which was virtually stupid. It was a major fail. And, you have to sometimes wonder at this point. We found out after Lundberg, after Michael Lundberg dropped out, we found out that a lot of people working for him were sabotaging him while they were paying him. And I'm starting to wonder if there's people in the Biden campaign that, I mean, think about it. These are the people who are around him and know him best and see on a day-to-day basis what we see bits and little bits of. They see it all day long. And they clearly know that Biden's out of his mind. Makes me wonder if there are people working for Biden right now that are trying to sabotage him to make sure that he doesn't end up the nominee. Some of those people probably work for the rotten Reverend Clinton. Now, we know that the two top people running his campaign right now, one was formerly a top campaign official for the rotten Reverend Clinton, and the other was running Beto's campaign. So that's who you got. Unbelievable. Okay, a follow-up to the story on Andrew Gillum. It appears that there is body cam footage from the cops that they got while they were entering the hotel room where Gillum was, along with his two friends. One who was completely passed out, apparently from a meth overdose. And the other guy was the guy who called, and he is the guy who is the professional male gay escort. He's the one who called the cops. And so we know now that there is body cam footage, and the cops there in Miami Beach are saying, well, because there isn't going to be any criminal charges, that this body cam footage is not really being treated as any evidence, and therefore it is subject to being released to the media or anyone who would like to have a look. So if you would like to get the body cam footage from the cops there in Miami Beach Police Department, you can simply call the Miami Beach Police Department and give them the case number, and they will provide you with the body cam footage of Andrew Gillum. My guess is by now many reporters are doing just that. But if you want to do it yourself, it is case number 2020-0002-1902. If you would like to personally request the body cam footage of Andrew Gillum in a drunken stupor, too drunk to even comment or answer the cops' questions, and see what the cops saw in the body cam, you can contact the Miami Beach Police Department and reference case number 2020-002-1902. Now, it appears that we are seeing this Never Biden movement springing up all over the internet. There's probably half a dozen to maybe a dozen. I saw 5 or 6, so there's probably over a dozen because they keep multiplying. These are hashtags that have to do with the Never Biden movement, and it's gaining steam. There was also a recent poll that came out where they questioned Sanders supporters, and they're finding that only 2 of 5 Bernie Sanders supporters say they will vote for Bite Me. Joe Bite Me. 2 of 5. That's not good. That's not good at all. That's about, what, 40%? Not good. I don't think there'll be... Remember, when you get into the national election and you get into these swing states and these swing districts, a few hundred votes swings a lot of these districts. Just a few hundred votes. And so if 40% of Bernie supporters don't show up in some of these swing states, and these are the places where Bernie is typically does better. This upper Midwest, the Rust Belt, the Northern Plains, and the Northwest, even somewhat in the Southwest. This is probably why the Trump campaign is starting to see there may be 3, 4, 5 more states that were formerly blue states or swing states that may now be in play for Trump. It's going to have a lot to do with that. Now, we saw this in 2016, and I think that the number then was like 10 or 20% of Bernie supporters voted for Trump or didn't vote for the nominee. But I think it's going to be much higher this time. And this, of course, is coming on the heels of finding out through Trump's rallies that 30% of the people attending Trump rallies are Democrats. 30% of the people coming to Trump rallies are Democrats. Then on top of that, we have polls that show Trump's approval with blacks and Hispanics is up 2 to 3 times. If these numbers all pan out, Trump will win in a massive landslide, with or without Bernie supporters. But clearly, Bernie supporters, I mean, they got screwed in 2016. They're big enough suckers to come back and get screwed again. I mean, it's, and so, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I would assume that they're going to behave in the same way. You're going to have, you have to remember, a lot of these Bernie supporters were too young to vote for Bernie or support Bernie in 2016. So some of them are just now of an age. So a lot of these supporters to Bernie are newer. I think he lost a lot of people, because I know a lot of people who were liked Bernie in 2016, but they soured on him after he went out and endorsed Clinton and campaigned for her and all the other things that we know about. So he lost a lot of people. He picked up a few new people, but as we can see in the numbers, he's not as popular in 2020 as he was in 2016. He's not pulling the numbers he did back then. So he's actually less popular than he was in 2016. And some of his support is obviously going to Trump. It's not going to Democrats. We can see it in the turnout numbers in the rallies, and we can see it in the turnout numbers in the primaries where Trump is running, but he's pretty much unchallenged, and we're seeing the turnout numbers there. So that tells us a lot. Well, we have the wild-eyed commie, Ocasio-Cortez, who's now parted company with Bernie. She's no longer on the Bernie train. She's no longer a Bernie bro. And she's now moving closer to the establishment, saying she will support Biden. Now, just a couple of days ago, she had advised people or told people that people who were avoiding going to restaurants, particularly ethnic restaurants, Chinese restaurants especially, that they were racist. That they were racist for not going out to these restaurants, and that everybody should stop being racist and continue going to all these restaurants, including Chinese. Now, I have a Chinese restaurant like a couple miles from me, and I go there like probably twice a week. I love Chinese, and I haven't stopped going to a Chinese restaurant. I mean, these people are basically Americans. I mean, they're Chinese, but they live in America. You know, I see them every week when I go there. I don't think they're making trips back and forth to China. If they did, they'd probably self-quarantine because they don't want to get all their buddies sick. So I have no problem going to a Chinese restaurant. But anyway, AOC, the wild-eyed commie, is now completely flipped her position, and now she's advising people to eat at home. This is just days after she was calling people racists for eating out, or for not going out. So now she wants people to eat at home. A week ago, she was calling you a racist if you were eating at home. So the wild-eyed commie will say whatever she has to say at that time to try and better her position. But I still think that I think her being elected was pretty much a fluke. She caught the Democratic Party off guard, and I think that Amazon deal that she cost, that was going to be in her district, that Amazon deal. I think that was the killer for her. She's running. She's got about 12 people running now for that seat. A lot of them are just, publicity stunts, but there's 3 or 4 really solid candidates running against her, and I think that she's going to be defeated. I think we're going to see the end of the wild-eyed commie, but right now she is begging the DNC and Nancy Pelosi to save her, and promising, of course, that she'll be a good little girl and fall in line if they don't take away her cushy little job in Congress, because she doesn't want to go back to being a bartender, which is pretty much all she's qualified for. She's got a degree in math, but she apparently had a bad math teacher. What can we say? Well, it looks like Rand Paul and Mike Lee are going to try and fix the FISA bill that passed through the House. Basically, what they're looking at is they're saying, hey, this is a foreign intelligence surveillance court. It should only be used for foreigners. And if you want to spy on an American, you have to go to a regular judge and get a warrant. This apparently is where they're at. I don't know how many senators they got on their side, but they are saying that if they don't get what they want, and they likely won't, that they will try and kill the bill in the Senate. So Lee and Paul tag teaming here to try to get either some relief on this horrible bill that passed through Congress, or they're going to try to kill the bill, one of the two. Rand Paul has talked to Trump, and basically Trump has told him that he's not really feeling very good about signing this bill that came through the House, or any bill, until he sees that the people who violated the law and went after him the first time are actually held accountable, meaning they're going to need to be charged and put in jail. Now, there's something kind of going on here. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I'm going to just give you my opinion, speculating on something. I was surprised to see that Jim Jordan and Devin Nunes and a couple others signed on to this House bill, especially based on what they've been saying for the past couple of weeks on Maria Bartiromo's show, Lou Dobbs' show, where those are the two people really been pushing it. Maria Bartiromo and Lou Dobbs been really following the FISA renewal pretty closely, and really surprised to see that Jordan and Nunes would sign on to this House bill. So I don't know. It's just a gut feeling I have that in order to get Nunes and Jordan, it's possible that Barr may have given them, or would have had to have given them, some assurance that the people who violated these laws in 2016 in the coup are absolutely 100% going to be charged with crimes. I have a rough time believing that Nunes and Jordan would sit in there in a meeting with Barr, sign on to this renewal of the FISA without getting some sort of guarantee from Attorney General Barr that the previous violations were going to be dealt with in terms of charging people. That's just a gut feeling I have. I could be wrong. It's just a gut feeling that I have. And we're going to find out in the not too distant future. It's just a gut feeling I have. I'll be interested to see if Maria Bartiromo tomorrow morning has Nunes on her program, because he's on there almost every week. And although the coronavirus is the big story, I'm pretty sure that Maria Bartiromo is all over this Spygate and this FISA thing. And if she has Nunes on her program, I am certain that she will ask him why he voted for this reauthorization, and did he get any assurances from Attorney General Barr that the previous violations were going to be dealt with. I'd be very surprised, but we'll wait and see. We're also learning now from Undercover Huber, that one of the main reasons that Uncle Bob the Executioner and the Hillary donor posse, specifically Andrew Wiseass, one of the things that they were most interested in asking Trump about, and one of the main reasons they wanted to get him to have to testify to them, other than the fact that they wanted to trip him up in an obstruction trap, but they wanted to ask him about this crazy story that was floating around back at that time. This would have been back in, I guess, spring of 2017. This made it on the news wires for about 24 hours before it fell off. I mean, I didn't even put it in my timeline. I don't even know if I even talked about it in my videos, because it was such a silly, ridiculous thing that I didn't take it seriously. But apparently, Andrew Wiseass took it seriously. And what I'm talking about is that they wanted to ask Trump about this crazy news story. I'm not really sure where it popped up. It was just fake news. And most people, it was just silly. It was like it came from The Onion or something. But the story that was floated, that was out there, was that Trump, this is just, keep in mind, this is literally 2 to 3 days after he had been inaugurated. So now he's the president. He's been to the inauguration. He's now at the White House. He's got full, Secret Service protection now. The most protected man in the world. Yet the story comes out that he went to, this is 3 to 4 days after an inauguration, that he slipped out of the White House, that he traveled to Lower Manhattan, to the South Street Seaport, so that he could schmooze with Russians and take part in a chess tournament. They wanted to question Trump on whether or not he gave the slip to the Secret Service 3 or 4 days after being inaugurated, went to New York to compete or participate in a chess tournament with some Russians. They seriously wanted to ask him about this. And again, what we've been learning over the past week or so from John Solomon and Sidney Powell, everything we've been learning, this should not surprise us as to how ridiculous and how corrupt this entire Mueller investigation was. And now we know the entire thing never, ever, ever should have happened. Rodenstein should never have appointed special counsel. And he is going to have to answer some very tough questions from somebody, I hope, because he ultimately is the one responsible. He appointed Uncle Bob the executioner. And I find it hard to believe that Rodenstein did that without wanting to make positively certain about the evidence. And it was known months before that Flynn was clean, there was no Trump-Russia collusion, both the FBI and the British government had debunked the Steele dossier. The Trump Tower meeting had been debunked a long time ago. Back in the summer of 2016, 4 days after it happened, they interviewed the translator. And he said, no, there was nothing. So they had known that for many months. And these were the three, if you go to the Mueller report, the first three major sections of the first part of the Mueller report deal with all these things, which Mueller knew and which Rodenstein should have known were total BS. And even after finding all this stuff and knowing it was all BS, they continued to drag it on for 2 years. The point of which was to try to get Trump in an obstruction trap and to try to damage him as much as they could politically to help flip the Congress in favor of the Democrats. They were hoping that they could win both houses of Congress, the House and the Senate, where they would then have impeachment articles in the House and they would impeach Trump in the Senate. That was their plan. And Uncle Bob and Rodenstein and the whole crew were all in on it. It is impossible for me to believe that Mr. Durham is going to complete his investigation and come to any conclusion other than it was a premeditated coup based on manufactured evidence and lies. I see no way that Durham is going to be able to let these people off the hook. Too many people watching this, too much evidence out in the public, too many members of Congress looking at it and have been looking at it. And most importantly, the president is not going to stop until these people are brought to justice. And as we can see over the past several weeks, he has been putting all his people in place. Trump has been putting all of his people in place. We've seen Barr make a couple of moves. We've seen Durham make a few moves. They're setting themselves up to take down the criminal perpetrators and at the same time to be able to resist or rebuff the onslaught that they know will surely be coming at them. Stay tuned. Things will continue to get more interesting. We're in a lull period right now, but believe me, we've been through these periods before in this Spygate fiasco. We'll sometimes go through months where we just get practically nothing, and then we'll just have a period of months where it's just an avalanche. So it's been this way throughout this whole story. So hang in there. Keep the faith. Trump won't let us down, I can assure you of that. You guys take care of yourself. See ya. Bye.